Another weekend of college football is underway. Well, really, since Tuesday of this week, we've had college football games every single night. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Got a couple of games tonight, and then, of course, tomorrow, a full slate of games. In today's video, we're going to talk about some of the games that are interesting to me. I'll give you a preview of the game and a prediction. Let's go. Yeah, good morning to that, but it's Uncle Lou here, though. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou. And guess what? I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true, and some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You can let me know in the comments down below at the end what you think about this video. Be sure and let me know which games it is you think I got wrong, too. All right, all the odds I use in this video, the over-unders, the money lines, the spreads, all that kind of stuff, team totals, is going to come straight from www.betnow.eu, and they're accurate as of about 12 o'clock this afternoon. I've been using betnow.eu for years. I'm comfortable with it. I've never had a problem getting money in or out, so that's just a site I always use. If you guys want to check it out, www.betnow.eu. Get signed up for an account. You can enter the promo code UncleLou. One word, all lowercase letters, UncleLou, and they'll give you a bonus on whatever you deposit. Good luck. Up first, probably the biggest game of the day, 12 o'clock on ABC. Michigan State goes on the road to take on Ohio State, and Ohio State's a 19-point home favorite in this one. Two Big Ten East teams, each with one loss. Ohio State, of course, with an early Week 2 non-conference loss at home to Oregon. Michigan State beat a couple of weeks ago by, I believe it was Purdue. So they each come in with the one loss. Michigan State does have a conference loss. A loss here by Michigan State would eliminate Michigan State from the Big Ten East. Ohio State doesn't have any conference losses, so you don't want to fall 2 games behind. This could be a pretty good game. Now, Ohio State has a pretty high-powered offense. They might have the best offense in college football over the last couple of months. Started off a little bit slow this season, like I said, losing to Oregon. C.J. Stroud, first-year starter. But over the last month to month and a half, the Ohio State offense has really been clicking. They can throw it. They can run it. The quarterback can run it. They can do it all. Travion Henderson, home run hitter at the running back position, can go for 90 yards every single time he touches the ball. And 3 NFL wide receivers that would probably start anywhere in America, of course, with Olave, Wilson, and Smith Najigba, I think is his name. It might be Najigma Smith. I could be getting that wrong. Anyway, Ohio State's offense is no joke. Michigan State's going to have to find a way to slow that down. The best way to slow down Ohio State's offense is probably to keep them off the field. And Michigan State does have a way they can do that with Kenneth Walker, their Heisman contending running back, has put up some ridiculous numbers. He had one of his best games of the season and Michigan State's biggest game of the season so far, a win over Michigan. Kenneth Walker is going to have another game like that and then some probably for Michigan State to be able to keep up with Ohio State offensively in this game. But if Michigan State can slow the game down on the ground, chew up clock, 5, 6, 7-minute drives to try to keep the Ohio State offense off the field, I think it's possible Michigan State can hang around in this game for a little bit. I just don't think Michigan State has enough offensive firepower to win this game. I really don't. It would take a really, really good defense to slow down Ohio State's offense. I don't think there's a defense anywhere right now that completely stop Ohio State's offense. When you have a team that's elite running the ball and elite throwing the ball, it's very hard to shut that down. Good defenses can sometimes take away one or the other, but it's very hard to take away both. As good as Michigan State's been, I just don't think they're explosive enough offensively. They're a little bit too one-dimensional to beat Ohio State, in my opinion. I do think Ohio State will win this game. It's at home in Columbus at the Horseshoe. 19 points does seem like a lot. They won by, 30-something points last week against Purdue, I believe it was. I'm going to take Michigan State in the points here. I'm not sure if I'll actually bet this game, though. If for some reason Michigan State is not able to establish the run early in this game and keep that Ohio State offense off the field, I could seriously see Ohio State running away with this game in the second half and winning by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Partly because I'm just a huge college football fan and want this to be a good game, I'm going to take Michigan State in the points, but I don't see any way Ohio State loses the game. All right, 12 o'clock on ESPN, we've got Wake Forest on the road at Clemson, and Clemson is actually a 4.5-point favorite. Wake Forest, like Ohio State, also one of the best offenses, at least if you look at the numbers, this year in all of college football, they seem to put up 50-plus points almost every single time they take the field. Now, Clemson, despite their troubles this year, does have a really, really good defense. They're top 5 in all the major defensive categories, yardage allowed, points allowed, things like that. I don't see any way possible Wake Forest scores 50 points against this Clemson defense. The problem for Clemson is not their defense, of course, it's their offense. Clemson's offense has been absolutely horrible, especially in conference games. They scored a lot against UMass or UConn and South Carolina State or whatever these terrible non-con teams they played. But outside of that, their offense has really struggled this season. Justin Ross, gone for the year, announced this week he's going to have foot surgery and enter the NFL draft in the spring. So he's done at Clemson. He was one of their best weapons offensively, even though he never really got going this year. The ukulele has been extremely inconsistent. They've been playing the backup some, Puma Shine. We'll see what Dabo decides to do this week. I just think Wake Forest is the better team. Now, Clemson has, I don't want to use the term luck because, I mean, people talk about Clemson like they're 4-5 or something like that. They're 7-2. They only have the 2 losses. They've had some close wins where I guess you could describe them as being lucky to get out of those games with a win. The Georgia Tech game comes to mind. I feel like that's going to catch up with them this week. I just don't think Clemson's offense can score enough points to win this game. Even if Wake gets into the 20s or 30s, that's probably going to be enough to beat this Clemson offense. I think Wake Forest can win this game on the road. They're still just sitting with the 1 loss. I don't even want the points here, 4.5. I'm going to roll the dice. Give me Wake Forest to win this one on the money line. All right, 12 o'clock on Fox. Iowa State on the road at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 3.5-point home favorite following their loss last week, their first loss of the season on the road to Baylor. I think it's 27-13 or 27-14, something like that. They lost that game. Can Oklahoma rebound? They've been very up and down this year. There's been times where Caleb Williams in particular has looked amazing at the quarterback position. There's been other times, the first half against Kansas, the entire game against Baylor, where he's looked like a freshman quarterback starting for the first time, which is what he is. So maybe we shouldn't be all that surprised. What is surprising to me this year has been Oklahoma's defense. It just hasn't been very good. Iowa State, a little bit disappointing this season as well. They were ranked in the top 10 in just about every single preseason poll that came out. They quickly removed themselves from the top 10 and really haven't been anywhere close to it since then. They've got to go on the road and play in Oklahoma. 3.5 points is not a whole lot. A lot of people looked at Oklahoma when they were 8-0 and then looked at those last 3 games, Baylor, Iowa State, and Oak State, and said, you know what, Oklahoma's probably going to lose one of those. They came out and lost the first one. I do not think Oklahoma's going to lose all 3, but I do think they're probably going to lose next week to Oklahoma State. I'm going to take Oklahoma this week because I just can't see them losing 3 in a row to close out the season. And if you've watched Oklahoma State play lately, it really looks like they're going to give Oklahoma all they want next week. I'm going to take Oklahoma to win at home by more than the 3.5. Maybe it won't be by a lot more, 6 or 7 points, but I think the Sooners can get it done. Give me Oklahoma, lay to 3.5 points. The Disappointment Bowl, 12 o'clock on ESPN2, Texas on the road at West Virginia. 2 teams that wish they could just pretend this season never happened, right? Texas, we've talked about them a ton on this channel. They're just an epic disappointment this year in Steve Sarkisian's first year. West Virginia, on the other hand, they don't have the excuse of a first-year head coach. Neil Brown, is that his name, out there in his 3rd year, I believe. Very, very disappointing for West Virginia. Some losses that you just did not see coming. Some unacceptable losses. West Virginia should be able to beat the majority of the teams in the Big 12, in my opinion, year in and year out. And under Neil Brown, they've been unable to do that. Very, very disappointing. I don't think he's going to get fired this year. But if West Virginia isn't drastically improved next year, then I think West Virginia has to start asking some tough questions about the direction their program is headed under Neil Brown. But Texas, of course, on the other hand, just a humiliating, embarrassing loss last week to Kansas. Texas has now lost 5 games in a row. You have to go back 70 years to find the last time Texas lost 5 games in a row. Shorthorns down on that. It was 1950s, I believe. They lost 5 games in a row. Haven't lost 5 in a row since then until this season. Things not going well for Steve Sarkisian. There appears to be, at least in my opinion, some locker room issues. You see this sometimes when a team brings in a new coach that maybe the new coach has a totally different philosophy than the old coach, everything from game plans and schemes and on the field stuff to just attitude and mentality. And a lot of times the players are unable or unwilling to buy into the new coach's way of doing things. That appears to be what's going on at Texas, at least to me. You had the leaked audio from the assistant coach come out a couple of weeks ago where he basically says that. In the audio, he's like, there's a lot of you that don't want to be here. There's a lot of you that don't need to be here. There's a lot of you that don't want to do the work required to succeed here. You need to enter the portal on it. I mean, it was, you guys have heard, if you're a Texas fan for sure, you've heard it. And that's basically, to me, what it sounded like he was saying. Look, a lot of you aren't fitting in here, so I suggest you get the hell out. It's basically what the coach was telling them. The players did not respond well to that, coming out in the first half the following week against Kansas and getting ran out of the building. Now, they played a lot better in the second half. They ended up being close in the end. And, of course, Kansas hits that two-point conversion to win the game at the end. But the point is, the wheels have completely fallen off at Texas for this season. Hard to think that they're going to be able to reel that back in over the last couple of games of the season. Plus, they got to go on the road. This is a long trip, Texas to West Virginia. This isn't really a pick for West Virginia that I'm making here. It's more a pick against Texas. Texas is just, it just seems like complete give-up mode. Texas and Florida seem to have a lot in common right now, in my opinion. I'm going to take West Virginia at home, late at 2.5 points. 2:30, NBC, Georgia Tech on the road at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 17.5-point home favorite. I think Notre Dame wins by more. Notre Dame is playing pretty good football right now. You know, people, once Notre Dame loses a game, people write them off. And I get it, because I'm of the opinion that if Notre Dame doesn't go 12-0, they don't deserve to be anywhere near the playoffs. They choose not to be in a conference. They choose not to play a 13th game, a conference championship game, which is another hurdle you would have to get over. Therefore, in my opinion, Notre Dame needs to go 12-0 to get into the playoffs every single year. So as soon as we see them lose a game, we tend to sort of write them off, right? But they've been playing pretty good football. I mean, look how good Wisconsin is playing right now, and then go back and look at the Notre Dame-Wisconsin score, all right? Last week, Notre Dame was like a 5 or a 6-point favorite over Virginia. They beat them 28-3. Notre Dame's playing pretty good football. Georgia Tech is not. They got to go on the road and play there. Notre Dame's better at home than they are on the road, even though Notre Dame's loss this season did come at home, but that was to a top-5 Cincinnati team. What was that, 28 to or 27-13, something like that. Anyway, doesn't matter. Point is, Notre Dame is a much better team than Georgia Tech, and Notre Dame seems to be hitting its stride right now, whereas Georgia Tech doesn't even have a stride. I'm going to take Notre Dame. I think they win this one going away. I could see a 4-touchdown game here. Give me Rudy, late of 17.5. 3:30, the CBS SEC game of the week. Arkansas on the road at Alabama. Alabama's a 20.5-point favorite. Arkansas was a great story the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Got up, I think, even into the top 10, number 8, I think, before they went on the road to Georgia and just got absolutely beat down with 37-0 or whatever that game was. And Arkansas just hasn't been the same team since then. Now, they're still a much better team than the Arkansas we're used to seeing in 2017, 2018, or 2019. They started to show some signs last year under first-year head coach Sam Pittman of kind of turning things around, definitely playing a lot harder. And we've seen that continue into this year. And even though things haven't worked out the last month or so for Arkansas, I still think they're a much better team than what they were years prior and headed in the right direction. Not close enough to that direction, though, yet to give Alabama a game on the road in Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama will win this game relatively easily. I don't know if they can cover the 20.5. We'll see. Alabama's got, I don't know if I would call these next 2 games for Alabama tough games or hard games, but they're physical games. Arkansas plays a physical style of football. They want to pound you on both lines of scrimmage. Auburn can be the same way. Alabama's got 2 physical games here to get through before their date with Georgia in the SEC title game coming up the first week of December. I know Alabama hasn't clinched the West yet, literally, but I don't see any way Alabama loses both of their next 2 games. I definitely don't see a way they lose this week at home. Maybe Auburn gives them a game next week on the road, although it's highly unlikely. Bo Nick's out for the season. It looks like Bama's probably going to win their next 2 games. Can they win this one by 20.5? And would a physicality of those 2 games have any effect on Bama heading into the SEC title game with Georgia the following week? To me, that's a bigger storyline than anything that happens in the actual game this week or next week for Alabama. I do think Alabama can beat Arkansas by more than the 20.5 points. I think they pull away in the second half. win by 24. Give me Alabama at home, lay the points. 3:30 on ESPN. This ought to be a good one. SMU on the road at Cincinnati. Cincinnati doesn't have any real opportunities left to impress anybody. SMU and probably Houston in their conference championship game are the two best games left on Cincinnati's schedule. Cincinnati's a 10.5-point home favorite in this one. It seems like I've been saying this for a month or more, but Cincinnati really needs a big win here. If all the favorites went out over the next 2 or 3 weeks into conference championship Saturday, Cincinnati's just not going to get in at 13-0 with these 8, 10, and 12-point wins that they've been accumulating. And even the win last week, which I think they ended up winning by 20-something points, that game was close well into the third quarter with a terrible, South Florida team. They just have not been impressive, Cincinnati, over the last 4 to 5 weeks. Now, they were very impressive the first half of the season. Blowout wins, a win on the road against Indiana, a win on the road against Notre Dame, two pretty good wins, particularly the Notre Dame win. But they haven't been overly impressive over the last month. They need some help, right? They probably need Bama to lose in the SEC title game. They probably need Oregon to lose a game. They may even need a 2-loss Big 12 champion. Those things happen, and Cincinnati wins out. It's possible they could get in. We'll see. But they need a big win here. It's at home. I think this is a game where if they're not going to get up for this game, then I don't know what they're waiting on. I'm going to fall for it again. Give me Cincinnati. Lay the 10.5. 3:30 on ABC. Nebraska on the road at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 9-point favorite. Talked a little bit about Wisconsin earlier. Wisconsin's one of the hottest teams right now. Check their last 3 or 4 games. They're not playing around here lately. Nebraska is playing around. Nebraska's favorite thing to do, of course, lose close games. I don't think this one's going to be close. Nebraska surprised me by keeping it close with Ohio State. I don't think it happens again. I think Wisconsin is sneaky good right now, and if I was a Big Ten East team thinking about winning the Big Ten East, I would not be sleepwalking past Wisconsin in that Big Ten title game. They have looked like a much better team over the last several weeks than they did the first several weeks of the season. I don't think Nebraska can hang with them, especially there, one of the tougher places to play in the Big Ten West, the whole jump around deal that they do. Camp Randall. Is that Randall Cunningham? I don't think so, but that's the only Randall that I know, though, except for Neo. I know Neo, too, but I know it's not named after Neo. What am I even doing? No one even knows what I'm talking about. Give me Wisconsin, lay the 9. 4 o'clock, SEC Network. Florida gets the hell out of Dodge, out of Gainesville. They head up north to Missouri to take on the Tigers, a bad Missouri team. Florida's a 9-point favorite? No, I'm not falling for that. Like, you either have to not bet this game or you have to bet Mizzou. How can anybody have the confidence to put $1 on Florida right now? Georgia broke them. I mean, how is that not obvious to anybody? Georgia beats the soul out of them. They go on the road the following week to a terrible South Carolina team. Not only did Florida lose, they got blown out. Then they come back home last weekend, give up 52 points to a 5-win FCS team named Samford. What is that, Samford and Son? Who is Samford? No one knows. Now, Florida did win the game, but they had to score 70 to do it. And then Dan Mullen comes out and brags about scoring 70 in the post-game press conference and how Emory Jones broke all Tim Tebow's records. I mean, even the Florida fans had to be looking at that and saying, "Clown, what are you doing?" I'm sorry, I can't put $1 on Florida. I just think, again, it's a case, in my opinion, of Dan having lost the team and lost the locker room. The team appears to be in give-up mode. There's no way I would put $1 even on Florida at -9 in this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida win. Missouri's not that good. They've been doing some quarterback shuffling around, playing a bunch of different QBs. They do have a really good running back. Beatty, I think is his name, Badie. If he can get going, sort of like LSU did on the ground game, then maybe Missouri pulls off the upset. I'm going to take Missouri in the 9 points, though. I just don't trust Florida at all, mainly Dan Mullen. In case you were trying to figure out a way not to watch the Baylor at Kansas State game this week, Fox Sports 1 has done you a favor and put it on at 5:30. There is not a soul on planet Earth who at 5:30 p.m. this Saturday is going to sit up out of their chair and go, let me see what college football game is starting right now at 5:30. Football games don't start at 5:30. I don't understand. I see this from Notre Dame does this with their 2:30 kickoffs on NBC. There's some other idiot programs that do that. I don't understand a 5:30. No one's going to watch this game. Baylor at Kansas State, but it's a pick 'em. Why? I guess because Baylor had a big emotional win over Oklahoma, and people are expecting some kind of a letdown? I don't know. Baylor is legit, particularly their defense, and defense travels. Defense travels. So I don't care if this is on the road at Kansas State. Give me Baylor. I don't think this game will be close. Now, here's your upset special, or at least the one that everyone's been pointing to all week long. And, you know, a lot of times this season, the obvious upset game has ended up being the upset game. In some seasons, that's not the case. Sometimes in college football, when things look too obvious, there's a reason, but because it's not going to happen. That hasn't been the case this year with these upset games. Michigan State losing to Purdue was the most popular upset pick on planet Earth all week long. What happened? Michigan State goes out, loses to Purdue. All I keep hearing this week is that Oregon is losing this game to Utah. But is it really an upset if that happens? Utah's favored. Utah is favored at home over Oregon. I can't tell if this is massive disrespect for the Pac-12 in general, and people are like, oh, the best team in the Pac-12? Well, what does that really mean? Or is Oregon really just not nearly as good as people think they are? And if that's the case, how do you explain week 2 with the win on the road at Ohio State? I get it that Ohio State is better now than they were then, but that's still, to beat Ohio State in Columbus, that is not easy to do. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm going to take Oregon and the 3 points. Look, if Oregon wins out, they're making the playoffs. If they can win the rest of their games by 1 point. If they're sitting there at the end of the year at 12-1 with a Pac-12 title, they're going to the playoffs. They know that. They have to know that. Now, they've known that a couple of times before and have lost in this exact same week. Was it 2 seasons ago? They were headed to the playoffs. They had, I think, only one loss. They were headed to the playoffs. They went on the road and lost at a bad Arizona State team on, I think, a Friday night a couple of years ago. Does it happen again this year on the road at Utah? Utah's not a terrible team, but they're not as good as they have been in a lot of years past. I'm going to take Oregon here to win the game, but, like I said, this is the most popular upset pick of the week, even though it's not really an upset. It's an upset in terms of where the teams are ranked, because Oregon's ranked in the top 5 of every poll you look at. But Vegas says Oregon is the underdog. I'm going to take the underdog. Give me Oregon to win the game. 7:30 on the ACC network, Virginia Tech on the road at Miami. Miami is a 7.5-point favorite in the we fired our coach and you didn't bowl. That's right, Virginia Tech has relieved Fuentes of his duties, effective immediately, appointing an interim head coach for the last couple of games of the season. Miami, much to the Miami fans' chagrin, has not relieved Manny Diaz of his duties. They did, of course, fire the athletic director. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of people could see it coming with Manny Diaz. We'll see. But Miami is a 7.5-point home favorite after losing last week in a rivalry game to in-state rival Florida State. Miami is clearly the better team here, but again, Miami is one of these teams that, sometimes once the season is over or once things start to spiral, they tend to get worse. I just can't pick Virginia Tech in this spot because they just got rid of their head coach. Now, if Virginia Tech was a little bit better of a team and didn't just fire their head coach, this is one of those spots where you could see Miami catching an L that they really have no business catching. I can't go that far this week, though, because of what's going on at Virginia Tech. Give me Miami, lay the 7.5 points. All right, then 8 o'clock on Fox, Oklahoma State on the road at Texas Tech. Oklahoma State's a 10-point favorite. Oklahoma State is a really, really good team. At least they're playing like a really, really good team right now. You know who they kind of remind me of this season, or at least the trajectory of their season? Reminds me of Ohio State. Ohio State lost in week 2 to Oregon. And then they had a couple of games after that where the offense looked a little sluggish. Some people sort of wrote them off. And now Ohio State is playing like one of the best teams in America, and they just have the one loss. A similar story with Oklahoma State. No one was paying attention to Oklahoma State. They were 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Well, they're all, no one cares. They lost a game. Well, they haven't lost since then. And what was everybody saying about Oklahoma up until last week when they lost to Baylor, right? Oklahoma can't be, they're beating all these teams by one score. They're barely beating all these bad teams. That's not good. Well, look at the last 3 Oklahoma State games. I mean, last week they beat TCU 63-17. 3 weeks in a row they've blown out their Big 12 opponent. And you can tell me, well, these are bad teams. It's Kansas, it's TCU. Okay, those are the same teams that Oklahoma was beating by 1 score. We can't get on to Oklahoma for barely beating these bad teams, but then not praise Oklahoma State for beating the absolute will to live out of them by 20, 30, and 40 points. Oklahoma State is playing really good football right now. Really good football. And Texas Tech is not. 10 points is not enough in this game. The average margin of victory for Oklahoma State in the last month is about 30 points. Now, I'm not suggesting they'll beat Texas Tech by 30 on the road, but they could, and I do think they'll beat them by 3 touchdowns. To me, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to take Oklahoma State, and next week's game is going to be huge. Oklahoma State hosts Oklahoma in the Bedlam game, Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma, last game of the season. It's in Oklahoma. It's a home game for Oklahoma State. They haven't beat Oklahoma since, I think, 2014 or 2015. They're playing way better than Oklahoma right now, and if you watch any Big 12 football at all, you know right now Oklahoma State and Baylor look like the 2 best teams in the Big 12, and particularly Oklahoma State, to me, looks like the best team right now. But they got to close things out. They got to win this week, and then, of course, they're going to have to win next week against Oklahoma, and then probably play Oklahoma again, or I guess that would be Baylor they would then play in the Big 12 title game. Oklahoma State could still get into the playoffs. They're in the top 10 right now. I've got them at 8. I don't know where the playoff committee has them there because, I give 2 shits what they do or say. They're a complete joke at this point. But they're in the top 10 somewhere in the playoff committee poll. And if they blow out Texas Tech this week, if they beat Oklahoma next week at home, and then beat a top 15 Baylor team, close to top 10 Baylor team in the Big 12 title game, they could be in a good position to end up at the 4 spot ahead of Cincinnati. So Cincinnati probably needs to be pulling against Oklahoma State. Anyway, give me the Cowboys and this one on the road. Lay to 10 points. All right, there you go. There's a look at some of the games coming up this weekend that are interesting to me. Of course, there's a whole other slate of games. I can't cover all the games. The video will be 5 hours long. But anyway, I do appreciate everybody watching. Good luck, www.betnow.eu, and have a good morning.